Peace and love, everybody. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, back for another Sunday Hope and Healing session where we aim to encourage, inspire, offer some hope, and actually bring about healing mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, as well as physically. And we're here doing that. We've been doing it for a little while. It's Sundays at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And that's what we're here doing. That's what we're about. And I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, the developer of a system of healing called Transcending the Matrix. Just earlier today, did a spoke at ministry Transforming Love Community, and we were dealing with the topic. The actual theme for this month is Transcending the Matrix, which of course. Wets my whistle, floats my boat, tickles my fancy, and whatever other idiom you can come up with. Particularly this being the fact that I was born on the 23rd and have been teaching Transcending the Matrix for 20 years now. I've been really enthused by this. But at any rate, the theme at that ministry all month, Transforming Love Community, all month has been Transcending the Matrix. And I spoke there doing part 4 of that, specifically under the topic of return to innocence. Hey, greetings to you, Curly Conscious King. Glad to have you in the space as always. Good to have you here, and anybody else who's here. Certainly a pleasure and a blessing to have you here also. Pray that there's something that will enter into your ear gate that will be stimulating in terms of the opening of your awareness, but more so, I pray that even as these words are passing through my vocal cords and being picked up on the microphone and transmitted to wherever it is that you are, more importantly, I pray that there might be frequencies that are transmitted that prove to be a blessing to you. All right, it's not just the words, but there are intentions behind the words that are coming out, and part of that intention is that there might be healing that's carried out as well, that there might be something that's nourishing to your soul, to your beingness, that's transmitted, going from my heart and my soul to yours, and that it might be made manifest in your life in some way that's meaningful or beneficial for you, some way that adds some value to your life. Okay. And so, like I said, just dealt with the topic was Transcending the Matrix. Subtopic was a return to innocence. And there was so much. I looked up and I was like, oh boy, it's almost quitting time. I need to rein this in. So I decided, kind of switch gears and decided to do Transcending the Matrix, a Return to Innocence Part 2 today for our live broadcast for today, just because I felt like there were some things that needed to be additionally expounded upon. So some of you are familiar with Transcending the Matrix, some of you might not be. Like I mentioned before, it's a healing modality, an approach to healing that has actually resulted in the healing of physical conditions and otherwise for people all across planet Earth. And it's something that I feel very honored and blessed to be able to share with people, and that I really feel profoundly blessed to be able to share in terms of helping to empower other people with these tools. As far as this modality is concerned. And in that spirit, Transcending the Matrix is really a philosophy of life. It's an approach to life in terms of switching how we see things and how we perceive ourselves and others. And a reality is that this earth and all the things that we see in it, the only thing in it that's real is love. And there's a lot of other stuff that we see. There's a lot of other stuff that we experience that's different than that feels very different than that, right? But the reality of it is that that's something that is less than real. I've said it before. I'll continue saying it. Everything that God made is good. If it's not good, then God didn't make it. And if God didn't make it, it isn't real. As real as it might seem, all of that is really part of the programming. All of that is part of the false evidence that appears real that we've bought into. And I shared earlier today, I'll share it again now. You know, while I'm broadcasting from this computer, and you might be watching on your computer, tablet, or cell phone, each of these devices have memory. They were programmed to be able to operate a certain way and programmed to be able to do what they do. Based on the programming that's gone in is what ends up being spit back out. And so there's a program that I'm using to actually be able to broadcast to YouTube and to Facebook right now. And you're on programming, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, that it's giving you this based on the programming that's gone in. And we actually have programming that's going on within us. Now, in the context of the way that we perceive life, we don't perceive life from a standpoint of innocence. We perceive life to many degrees according to a standpoint of error, wrongdoing, right? And miscreation. Uh, that's part of what comes with this process of being human, living on planet Earth, and yet we end up in that process forgetting who it is that we really are. We forget our original innocence. We forget our original innocence. We become our perspective of the world becomes skewed. It becomes tainted. Our perspective of ourselves becomes skewed. It becomes tainted. And then how we end up living our lives is as a function of a mix of that which is good and that which is really essentially out of alignment with who it is that we were really ultimately created to be. And so we were created in the image and the likeness of the infinitely wise, infinitely loving, infinitely powerful one who defies the limitations of any kind of name or any box that we can put it to. And some people, will use different languages and different languaging. Most commonly is just referred to as God. God is simply a word that represents that which you hold above everything else. And so there is infinitely wise, infinitely powerful, infinitely knowledgeable, everywhere equally present across the entirety of the cosmos within all spheres and dimensions of time, past, present, and future, and whose scope is so vast that eternity and infinity are encompassed within it. There's no way for the 10% or so of your brain capacity that you're using to be able to conceptualize the totality of the profundity and the utter vastness of that which is totally transcendent of everything. Right? um, and certainly that if we were to allow ourselves to be present to that inspires a sense of awe and wonder, and the awe of God is the beginning of wisdom. That's scriptural. Okay. And we're made of the same stuff that God is made of. We're made of the same stuff that God is made of. And yet we get things twisted in a lot of ways. We have designed in our minds and our thinking and our error thinking frequently a God that is in the image and likeness of us and all of our stuff, our baggage, our misguided thinking based on false teaching that we've bought into. And when I say false teaching, I'm not just talking about religious teaching and things of that nature. I'm talking about things that we've bought into about ourselves, about life, really about anything that just isn't true. It just isn't true. And it doesn't mean that people weren't well meaning and sharing certain things. It's just missing the mark, which is sin by definition, is missing the mark, which I refer to as brokenness. And those things that we do that are out of alignment, that are missing the mark, we're doing from a standpoint of brokenness. And then as a result of that, we end up feeling a certain way about ourselves. And then we engage in other certain behaviors. It's behaviors that might be detrimental to other people, behaviors that may be detrimental to we ourselves, behaviors that may be detrimental to the earth, behaviors that are not in alignment with the progression and the advancement of life, the living of life, the going forward of life. Okay. And so that's what it is to live backwards, if you will, which is all that the word evil is live backwards. And so we have a lot of situations where we're living out of alignment, where we're thinking out of alignment, where we're perceiving out of alignment, and we end up feeling a certain way towards our brothers and sisters in creation. We end up being upset with other people that we encounter who are living life the best that they know how to, because of the pain that has ended up resulting in for us, or maybe someone we care about. And so we end up having this, to a degree, we get kind of this us them mentality sometimes. To a degree, we get this mentality of there are limits on how much joy, how much peace, how much love there can be. There's limits on resources that are available. And so that keeps us also locked into a fear-based mentality or fear-based mindset, a fear-based perspective of life. And the reality is that in what I refer to as the matrix of third dimensional beliefs of separation and limitation, that is really the conglomeration, the cumulative effects, the cumulative programming of all of the things that we have taken in and stored within our data center, which is housed within our human vessel. And then we operate according to that programming. And the reality is that we have all had viruses uploaded onto our system. And I'm not talking about something like COVID. COVID would fall into that category, yes. But I'm not just talking about that kind of thing. I'm talking about things that enter into the realm of our consciousness that end up resulting for us and manifestations that are out of alignment with our highest and best good. Okay. There are different areas where we've thought certain things, we've experienced certain things, and then those things have a way of creeping into other areas of our lives and infecting us and affecting us, that ends up causing us to have effects and outward experiences of our lives in the way that we relate to and impact other people. And then we end up, because the soul was designed to be pure, the soul was designed in purity and in love. And when we operate out of alignment with that, it creates a cognitive dissonance within us. There's something that is mismatched, it's misaligned, it's not moving in the direction that we were intended to. And so that creates problems. Just like if you were to take, you know, corn oil and put it in your gas tank, or water and put it in your gas tank, it wouldn't run like it runs on fuel, because that's not how the car was designed. And it would end up resulting in problems. You'd end up perhaps with some transmission problems. Certainly your engine would have some problems. So there would be some manifestations of trying to operate that machinery in a way that's different than how it was designed. Well, how you and I, beloved, were designed was to exist in peace, love, and light, and in power. Now, the thing about that is that we have moments of peace. We have moments of love, although frequently even our own perspective of what love is skewed, and we see it as something that is really more aligned with wanting to control someone else, or maybe more aligned with obsession, or maybe more aligned with sentimentality. But love, really at its core, is filled with grace. It's unconditional. It's not based on if a person is doing what you want them to do or being what you want them to be. That's the love that God has for you and me. That even though we may get off track along the way, as we do as humans living on earth, there's always a beckoning of us back home, a beckoning of us back to love, a beckoning of us back to the truth of who we really are. And there's nothing that we can do that can make God stop loving us. And some people have a hard time accepting that because of bad things that were, quote unquote, bad things that were done to them, or bad things that they've done, or part of that programming again. The reality is that we all have this, our bodies are like a computer. They store information, just like this computer that I'm on, broadcasting from, stores information, or the computer, phone, or tablet that you're on right now. It has information that's able to be stored on it. It's got, and it will operate according to what programming is stored there, what information is stored there, and so forth. You pull that back up. When you attempt to pull that back up, you'll be able to see it there. Well, the reality is with us, we aren't necessarily consciously aware of all the stuff that's stored on our hardware, aka these earth suits or these physical bodies. And in the context of that, we end up feeling a lot of times, we end up experiencing ourselves a lot of times being triggered by things that are really feeding into errant thoughts, errant concepts that we've taken on from previous experiences. And so what happens is that ends up being stored in our DNA, in our body. The DNA in just one cell, within one microscopic cell. Again, if you take it out, and if you take that DNA in just one cell, and your body is made of billions upon trillions of cells, you take the DNA in just one cell and you stretch it out, it's 6 feet long. You can store 700 terabytes of information in the DNA in just one cell. You take all the cells in your body, there's enough memory there for you to remember everything that has ever happened throughout the course of the history of the planet. Right? That's how powerful you are. You don't necessarily give permission to know that. People, for the most part, aren't really telling you that. For a lot of times, people are maybe sometimes people are encouraging us, but a lot of the information, a lot of the feedback that we get along the way is that we're somehow not enough, that we're somehow falling short, that we're somehow not good enough, or we're too much of this, we're not enough of this, or we're too much of that. And this happens even from the moment of our conception. Because from the moment of conception, you have stored in your body everything that you've thought, heard, smelled, felt, experienced. Arguments that might have been taking place that your mother was privy to, you were privy to while you were in the womb. Information that's being taken in from the news or from conversations with other people, you're taking in that information as a fetus in the womb. You were taking in that information, and subconsciously stuff that happened even while you were in the womb may still be with you now if it's not been reconciled properly. And so maybe your father wasn't there, or maybe your mother wasn't there, or maybe they both were physically there, but they weren't able to give you exactly what it was that you were needing in a particular moment, because you didn't come with a handbook. You didn't come with an instruction manual that was specific to you. And so your very human parents made some mistakes along the way, and not even realizing that a lot of those things you internalize, it's stored within your hardware, in other words, in your physical body, and it's running programs. Your life is the running of programs where you might find that you are behaving in a certain way that might not be the best thing for you. You may even be clueless of where it's coming from, why you're behaving that way. And the reality is because there's some deeply held subconscious things going on, of maybe from some past hurt, some past disappointments, some belief systems that are limiting and limited, and you may have gotten this idea that this type of person is unsafe. You may have gotten the idea that you're unworthy somehow, that you don't deserve love. You might have gotten the idea somehow, you might have ended up finding yourself in situations where you're repeating the same kind of patterns based on how it is that you feel about you. And maybe behaviors that you've engaged in, other people might have shamed you, might have tried to make you feel bad about things that you did, things you did in your unconsciousness. Even though you might feel like you knew what you were doing, you weren't, you were unconscious. The essence of who you were wasn't at work on full display in that moment, and you may have done and said some things that were maybe even horrendous, that caused pain to other people. And guess what? The reality is this: you can't cause pain to other people without causing pain to yourself. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. In the East, it's referred to as karma. In science, it's referred to as the law of cause and effect. In the context of Christianity, it's referred to as you reap what you sow, right? It's a reality. And so I heard an old preacher say one time, 20 years ago or so, said you can't make somebody a peanut butter sandwich without getting a little taste for yourself. Any good that we do ends up coming back to us. Anything that we do that's caused some issues for other people, we're going to get an opportunity to experience that too. And it's not because God is trying to punish us for our bad deeds. It's because if you're driving your car at 100 miles per hour to a brick wall and you're getting indications that you need to turn, if you don't turn, it isn't that God is punishing you by, when you crash into that wall and your car is totally destroyed and your body is completely mangled, and your body and your spirit no longer dwell in the same place. It's not that you're being punished with that. It's just that you're not operating in accordance with that which would progress you forward in life. You're operating out of alignment. The law is it's a scientific law that force equals mass times acceleration. Into if you're driving into a brick wall going at a high speed, there's going to be certain consequences of that. It's not that God is trying to punish you. It's not that the wall or the car is trying to punish you. It's that you are out of alignment, and moving in the direction that you are moving in could only have the result that it would end up having based on what the actual laws of nature actually are. And we're all subject to whatever the highest law is that we subject ourselves to. And so the reality is that there are many times in our lives where we could actually experience a totally different thing, but we end up experiencing something that ends up being more painful based on the seeds it is that we're sowing. And then we end up reaping that harvest as a result. And so using this context of karma, where, yeah, you might see videos on YouTube or TikTok or something on social media that say instant karma, like somebody does something and then instantly they're getting kind of the backlash of whatever that poor decision was that they were making. Well, listen, karma isn't about punishing. Karma is about inspiring compassion. If you do something that ends up causing someone else pain, things end up unfolding in a way where you might experience something similar, not to punish you, but to help you understand what it was that you helped to engender in the life experience of somebody else, and to have compassion for what it is that they're experiencing, and hopefully lead you to behave in a way that's in alignment with what actually supports life, right? And so when we engage in certain things, really on a certain level, our soul is wanting to make things right with us. We do things out of misaligned thinking, out of a misaligned perspective, in order to be able to get on track, to get back on track. Who we really are at our core is pure love and divine light. Who we are, or what we do in terms of our behavior, is oftentimes something very different. It's oftentimes something very different. And in that, we get sidetracked from who it is that we really are, and we lose that sense of innocence. We lose that sense of innocence. We even sometimes feel in situations where we have life experiences where we might have been hurt or abused, maybe even as a child, where we feel like our innocence has been stolen, or we have different life experiences and we seem to no longer be in touch with that spark that used to be there at some point, and we feel like there's been some loss of innocence, or we've behaved in a certain way that wasn't really reflective of the innocent, pure souls that we actually are at our core. And we end up living out a different story. We ended up living out something that was quite to the contrary of that love, of that light, right? And so we can't do that without naturally having something within us that wants to self-correct or wants to balance that out. Because again, it creates a sense of internal conflict within us. And then what we might do is we might end up blaming somebody else for what it is that we did to them. For you to be really honest with yourself, there's some times where you've experienced that. Maybe somebody responding that way towards you, maybe you responding that way towards someone else. If you know who you are, you can't do ill to anybody else. If you know who you are, you can't do ill towards yourself. And guess what? We're all interconnected. We're all interconnected. Martin Luther King Jr. would have turned did I say 96 last week? It would have turned 94 last Sunday, a week ago today. And one of the things that he said that I always valued and appreciated is we're all caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, that whatever affects one directly affects all of us indirectly. This is part of the interrelated structure of our existence. And what he said was very true. And he was speaking scientifically. He wasn't just speaking spiritually, he was speaking scientifically. And so the reality is that everything that we think, say, and do has a consequence on some level in our lives, and it ends up playing out in some way in our lives. And in the process of this, we get sidetracked from the innocent, the true, the pure. We end up taking on sickness, dis-ease, heartache, frustration, guilt, shame. We end up lashing out at our brother and at our sister in creation. We get on ego trips. We end up engaging in wars. We end up being unfaithful towards the truth of who we really are, and that manifests in a ton of different ways, from being unfaithful in a marriage to condemning other people, to doing things that are evident of self-harm, to people pleasing, and a whole bunch of different things. And that's because at some level we've forgotten who it is that we really are, and and there's, as a result, a need to return to that. Yes, you had some experiences where somebody told you that you were too much. You're too much of this or too much of that. What really was a more accurate statement was they can't handle whatever it is that you are. That's really a more accurate statement. And that doesn't mean that you're always right, because real talk, you're not. I'm not always right. None of us are. We all have things that are in our blind spot. We all have areas where we're triggered, where we don't even recognize that we're necessarily being triggered in that moment. We all have some prejudgments. We all have some predispositions based on deeply withheld subconscious things that we're not even present to the stuff that's going on, that's leading us to behave the ways that we're behaving sometimes. And so we've taken on this accumulation of this programming, if you will, that tells us that this person who belongs to this religion is wrong. That tells us this person who is of this particular ethnicity, that they're a certain way. It tells us that we can't trust, or there's no point to love, or that tells us that we're damaged goods somehow, right? This is a part of what happens for us as human beings living on earth. And while we all have our very unique experience, one thing that is not unique to any of us is that we all have stuff that we accumulate, referred to as baggage commonly. And the baggage is the issue, not the core of who we really are. The problem is that we think that who we are is defined by our baggage. Now, the reality is that there's some things in life that our souls have willingly taken on in terms of our life experience, but not to get caught up in the baggage, but to be able to transcend it, to be able to rise above it. There are souls who came into this earth who their parents were not maybe the wisest people. Maybe they had their own baggage based on abuse that they had endured, maybe based on harshness that they had encountered in their life, where they lost sense or didn't have a clear sense of who it was that they were. And that was based on the generations that came before them. Frustrations and missed opportunities and unfulfilled dreams of being placed in subservient positions, perhaps, or in other situations, maybe placed in situations where it's developed a sense of entitlement, and all kinds of different manifestations of brokenness show up in people independent of gender, independent of ethnic identity, independent of political leaning, independent of financial status, independent of whether a person is obscure and unknown or whether the person is known the globe by practically everybody on the planet. Nobody is immune to falling short in some way. Nobody is immune to hardship based on whatever their circumstances in life are, or whatever else might be going on with them. All of us have some things where there are opportunities for growth, and all of us can be served well by a return to innocence. Sometimes we experience things in life and we're upset because that innocence seems to be no more in us. Sometimes we get to a point where we have a hard time trusting, and we're angry about that because of life experiences that may have resulted in that, in us feeling that way. But at the end of the day, God's grace is sufficient. God's grace is sufficient for you. It's sufficient for me. It's sufficient for all of us. And there is a love that is available for each and every one of us that transcends, that supersedes anything that anybody has ever said or done to us. The tricky part is learning how to fully receive that and how to get in alignment with that. In other words, the tricky part is recognizing where we've blocked ourselves off and where it is that we need to welcome the light of God's love into our lives. And any area where you're having a problem in your life, it's not that you're having marriage problems. It's not that you're having problems on your job. It's not that you're having financial problems. It's not that you're having problems with your children. It's not that you're having these different things that we say are our problems. At the root of it, we're having a God problem, an area where we've not fully received the presence of God into that particular area. And that doesn't mean that you don't have challenges that we experience in life. The challenge is how to fully welcome in the presence of God in any and every situation and to operate according to that. To operate according to that. How do we do that? How do we do that? I said before, when we really know who it is that we are, our behavior ends up being governed accordingly. Now we can say who it is that we are. I can tell you that based on my name Royce means the son of the king. I can tell you that I'm a son of the king, that I'm a child of the Most High. And yet there's some, even in me, even the person who's developed a methodology called Transcending the Matrix and has been doing it for 20 years, been doing healing work for longer than that actually. There are things that show up in my blind spot too. All of us have those where we have room for growth. And so if we're experiencing a problem, it's an opportunity to invite God in. A lot of us look at situations where we might feel bad or we might feel we can handle it on our own and we edge God out of the situation. Our ego gets to work. Or we might feel bad about something and instead of running to God, we might run away from God. But guess what, folks? Anytime we're having those situations, that's an indication of a place where we need to welcome God in more fully, or we need to welcome the light of God's love in more fully. I do a lot dealing with healing, right? I do a lot dealing with healing. Guess what? Healing is fortified. Sickness, illness, dis-ease are fortified by errant things within our consciousness. Even when a person has an accident, even if a person is shot, even if a person is in a car accident, even if a person, you know, is a innocent bystander and ends up getting hurt in a situation, there isn't anything that we can experience that is outside of the space where God's grace can reach. And really what I wanted to say before that I know people sometimes have a hard time accepting, is that the things that happen in our lives are things that happen to some extent respective to the programming that we have going on inside of us. And I'm telling you, I've seen situations where people had injuries, where people ended up being in accidents and end up having pain or bodily functions not operating the way that they were designed to, and then we resolved it. And then that issue was no longer physically present because even the accident, even the injury, whatever way it ended up manifesting itself, was something that was waiting to happen. It was calling forth to the innermost you for you to be able to bring it to light, expose it to healing, reconcile it to the greater truth, and to be able to go forward more more fully, in a more empowered, more enlightened, more healthy, more life affirming way. So there's actually a meditation that actually had it playing all night last night. Um, a return to innocence meditation, and what it really is getting at is helping to clear out some of those cobwebs, those grit lines of the matrix, as I refer to it, that have been overlaid over our perspective. And so we're seeing through the lenses of our drama, we're seeing through the lenses of our baggage, we're seeing through the lenses of our internal programming, and therefore we're not, most of the time we're not seeing the real truth of a situation. Most of the time we're not seeing the real truth of a person. Most of the time we're not seeing the real truth of a situation or of a moment even, right? And in the process of that, when we're viewing things from the askewed perspective of this illusion, in the Sanskrit, there's a term called Maya, which we frequently translate as illusion. A more accurate rendering is that things are not as they seem. And so people people behave according to what things seem like. And oftentimes we'll dig our heels in the ground and stand on what it is that we believe, because we don't want to be wrong. Because our ego really doesn't want to be wrong. And our egos want to be right. The reality is the ego can never be right. It's true. It's true. But in terms of some solutions, like I said, I've got this meditation. It's actually a theta brain level meditation. Um, Theta brainwave is a state where the brain waves are very receptive to suggestion. And it's really dealing with, like I said, clearing away, um, those grid lines of the matrix, if you will, or the just kind of a general clearing. And if that's something that you're interested in, reach out and let me know, and I'll uh, make a way to get it to you. In fact, let me pull up these banners, because if you want to reach me, let's see. Okay, you can reach me on Facebook at Royce Fletcher Thomason, or on Instagram at Royce Fletcher Thomason, or Instagram at Transcending the Matrix. Um, any of those ways you can reach me. Um, or if you want some healing or interested in training as far as the Transcending the Matrix healing modality is concerned, certainly happy to support you in that way as well. But if you want that meditation, reach out to me, and we'll make arrangements to be able to get that to you. I believe that you'll find it to be of value to you, certainly. Uh, I tend to feel hesitant about putting it on like YouTube or something, because of the brainwave state that you go to. If you end up getting distracted or end up having to do something else, I I don't want you to be distracted or interrupted through um, while you're going through the meditation. And I know a lot of times on YouTube that can happen if you don't. Um, well, I don't know that I have enough views of my stuff at this point that they're putting commercials on it. But I was going to say, if you don't have the YouTube Premium, you can end up having commercials coming on while in the midst of the meditation. I don't want that to happen to anybody. Anyway, um, I definitely want to encourage you all to allow space for God's grace to reach you. Allow space for God's love-filled grace to reach you. If you're a human being living on planet Earth, You've done some things that were out of alignment. If you're a human being on planet Earth, you've made some mistakes along the way. There were some times where you weren't seeing things clearly, and not seeing things clearly, you behaved in a way that wasn't the greatest. You've caused, your behavior has resulted in pain for other people. The more you recognize that, and the more you recognize your own need for grace, it's a little bit easier to extend that to other people. And the more you're able to extend that to other people from a genuine place, the more you'll find that you may be receptive to receiving that for yourself as well, right? And vice versa, and vice versa. All right. And so I'm going to just do just really a quick kind of general healing for anybody who's present or who catches the playback of this. And so, God, I know you to be a healer. I know you to be the source of all healing. And through the union that we share, the power of pure love, demonstrate you as a healer on the behalf of anybody and everybody who's watching this who says, me, I want that. Neutralizing the causal root of all sense of lack of innocence, in whatever ways that may show up, as guilt, shame, poor behavior, causing harm to self or others. From the point of the causal root and the entire energetic structure of every strand of DNA and every cell of our respective bodies, and transmuting it into and replacing it with the bliss that comes with the return to innocence and a profound sense of spiritual maturity made manifest as living the light and living the love. And I bear witness to our wholeness on this date and in this time and space called now. Thank you for this gift of your divine love. It is done. It is done. It is done. All right. So let's start with real quickly with belief systems from our early childhood. Okay. And whatever number of billions there might be of experiences that have fortified limiting belief systems, to transmute and purify those through the light of God's love and replace them with a sense of limitlessness, with a sense of limitlessness and responsible grace. I don't think those are two words I've ever uttered together before in life. Um, all right, now let me look at. Actually, let's take a look at some karma real quickly. Some karma that's needing to be reconciled. Okay. And I want to look first of all if this is like real karma or imagined karma, because sometimes it could be actual karma, sometimes it's stuff that we imagine to be the case. I want to resolve that. You know, they say that a person who is with like a really good-hearted person in a relationship, and if they're not feeling themselves all the way there, or they're not feeling quite worthy of that, they'll end up behaving maybe badly towards that person, or maybe be unfaithful towards that person, and maybe treat somebody who treats them badly better. Okay, again, out of that sense of unworthiness and then feeling bad about themselves, so they treat this person who is actually they perceive as a good person poorly, to validate their own sense of being a bad person or not being good enough somehow. and it's a way of punishing themselves. So I want to look at that kind of thing. Okay, as it relates to maybe harm done to a child. We want to resolve that within our psyche and bring restoration of peace and infuse a healthy sense of compassion. All right. Okay. All right. I want to take a look right now, real quickly, also at just in general ways that we seek to punish ourselves. And usually, the way that we seek to punish ourselves is in behavior that we engage in with respect to other people. Okay. We might start arguments. We might, do things, to try to get back at somebody. All right. Let's bring that into reconciliation. And actually also strengthen us to be able to see the real root cause of the things that we experience in our lives. But for us to be able to do that and be able to handle it with any degree of sanity, we've got to be spiritually mature enough to be able to look at that, see that, accept it, acknowledge it, and move on from it. Okay. And so want to support us in terms of being able to bring to the light the things that were in the darkness. And strengthen us to have the intestinal fortitude and the clarity and the strength and the wisdom and the love to be able to go forth in the most healthy way possible. Okay. All right. I want to look specifically for a moment at guilt, because that's something that's coming up. Guilt about things that we've done or ways that we've allowed ourselves to be subject to guilt. Invitations that we've taken to guilt trips, where we end up feeling a certain way about ourselves as a result. I'm going to bring that into reconciliation. All right, that's looking a little better. All right, I'm going to do just a couple more adjustments, and then we'll wrap it up for today. So I want to look at, for a moment, the collective consciousness of humanity and the sense of humans, all the stuff tied up with humans hurting other humans. Now, that's actually a big thing. Just going to address it just real briefly to offer some degree of healing in that area as it impacts us respective to what's going on in the collective consciousness of humanity. Okay. And that dealing with programming of separation. All right, 32 billion plus. So we're going to purify those. Okay, that's looking better. Still some work to be done there. And let's look at just supporting us in terms of an openness to being in complete alignment with that which supports life, which includes yours, includes the planet upon which you live. Okay. All right. Now let me look at something else, and that is the looking out for me, myself, and I mentality that's rooted in a perspective of a concept of limitation, programming of limitation. There's a limit on how much good can come your way, and so you may try to hoard it for yourself and do what you need to do, what you feel like you need to do to benefit you, independent of how it might impact somebody else. So let's bring some healing to that. And that's coming also from a perspective of brokenness. Also coming from a perspective of uh, fear of, to a degree, fear of loss. So we want to reconcile that fear of loss to be able to embrace the world and everything that's in it loosely, to wear this world and everything that's in it as a loose garment, while at the same time being able to embrace commitment. I know that's an interesting balance to find, but want to strengthen us to be able to find that sweet spot and to live in that sweet spot. Okay. All right. And I'm just going to do one more and then we'll wrap it up. This last one is going to be the benefits that we get from being irresponsible, of not taking full responsibility for everything in our life. That's a kind of big one, folks. All right. So we want to be strengthened to take 100% full responsibility for everything in your life. You can't take responsibility necessarily for what happened to you when you were a kid, but you can take responsibility for where you go from now. Right? All right. Well, God, thank you so much for this healing that you've allowed to happen today. Thank you for the overflow and the expression of love. Thank you for the increased willingness to truly see, including the things that we were afraid to look at before. Thank you. Thank you. Hashem Yeshua HaMashiach. All right, beloved, that wraps us up for today. Again, you can find these broadcasts and other stuff on Instagram at Royce Fletcher Thomason, or Instagram at Transcending the Matrix, or Facebook at Royce Fletcher Thomason, or YouTube at Matrix Healing. God bless you. I love you. And I'm here to offer love and support, a bunch of peace and love as we work towards reaching and dwelling in that state that, or the sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. Peace and love, everybody.